Georgia's Gunnar Stockton was invited to and will participate in the Manning Passing Academy this summer. That's going to happen a couple of weeks from now. It's a 3 or 4 day event where college football players, coaches, the Mannings, they're there to help coach high school football talent, quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends. But I think, more importantly, Gunnar Stockton getting invited to this and participating in this is a sign that there's people out there that respect his talents and that think that he has a lot to offer at one of these types of events. A lot of the top quarterbacks in college football were invited to this. I've kind of been looking at a list and seeing some of the notable names that are going to be doing this, and Gunnar Stockton is one of them. We talked a little bit about Gunnar Stockton and the doubt that I think he is certainly been receiving this offseason as Georgia's starting quarterback, as Georgia's likely starting quarterback. Look, Kirby hasn't officially said, Gunnar's our starting quarterback for 2025. That's what the case is. If you're still holding out some hope that it's Ryan Puglisi, if you're a Ryan Puglisi guy, I understand there's a lot of talent with him. He can really sling the rock, but Gunnar Stockton is going to be Georgia's quarterback this coming season. And I think that there was a lot of hype with Carson Beck heading into the first year that he was the starter, right? In 2023, there was a ton of hype. There was a lot of, hey, look, this transition for Georgia is going to be pretty seamless, going from Stetson Bennett, who had just ripped off a couple national championships and helped Georgia out in a lot of ways. There was thought that there would be a seamless transition to Carson Beck as Georgia's quarterback. And there essentially was, right? He had a very prolific passing year in 2023. And then the expectations get a little bit higher. And Beck is supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country, a Heisman contender, a first-round pick contender, all of those things. And most of that ended up not happening for Georgia in 2024. So then you carry that over to 2025. There's doubt in the air with Georgia, more so than there has been in probably about 4 seasons. Heading into a year, there's more doubt about Georgia, and there seems to be plenty of doubt about Gunnar Stockton. Now, most of the national college football world has seen Gunnar Stockton for about 6 quarters of action, right? The third and the fourth quarter of the SEC championship game against Texas, and then that Sugar Bowl loss to Notre Dame in the college football playoff this past year, where he started in place of the injured Carson Beck, who then, I don't know if he had made that decision or not. By that point, a couple weeks later, he transfers to Miami. And now Gunnar looks to be Georgia's guy for 2025. But Georgia and he are not getting the buzz that it's gotten the last few years, which is not atypical in these situations. When I think back to the Stetson Bennett show, and I think back to the offseason from 2021 to 2022, so that 2022 spring and summer, there were certainly plenty of people who were like, hey, it's cool. Thank you, Stetson. Thanks for helping Georgia win a national championship, but goodbye, right? The people didn't want him around. He comes back and Georgia has an even more successful season when you consider being 15-0 and also bringing home an SEC championship trophy that they didn't in that 2021 season when they won the national championship. 2022 ended up being an even bigger season. Stetson Bennett has a bigger season himself. He ends up being a Heisman finalist for the Georgia Bulldogs, something that hadn't happened this century. Well, Gunnar, before it even really starts, is kind of getting a little bit of that Stetson Bennett treatment, right? And I think that these little things like the Manning Passing Academy, good learning experiences, also good for notoriety, but it just kind of goes to show you, people who know football and care about football out there, there are people out there that do have a belief in Gunnar Stockton. I talked for a lot longer, I think, than I normally would before I'd introduce myself. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post here. I thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sticking with me. We're going to talk about Gunnar Stockton and some of the other quarterbacks in college football in the SEC over here for the next few minutes. make sure you're going to dogpost.com. It's important to me that you check out dogpost.com, that you check out our newsletter, and you check out the deals that we have going on over there. Just click on an article, click on a link, and you'll see everything that's going on with us over on the site. Like I said, it's important to me that you all check that out. So, some notable guys at this passing academy. Lenore Sellers, South Carolina, a guy who people will need to watch out for if he gets the passing aspect completely down in his game. We're talking about one of the more dynamic quarterbacks ever. All right, one of the better runners at the quarterback position, scramblers at the quarterback position that I've seen. Marcel Reed from Texas A&M, another kind of run-first quarterback, an option quarterback. He'll be there. Arch Manning, of course, grandson of Archie Manning, nephew of Eli and Peyton Manning, son of Cooper Manning. He will be there, of course. Cade Klubnik from Clemson, another guy that's projected to be a top quarterback. John Mateer, the Oklahoma transfer coming from Washington State. He's expected to be there. Another top quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. Avery Johnson from Kansas State. Sam Leavitt, Arizona State, certainly one of the players that's considered to be one of the top quarterbacks in college football this coming season. Luke Altmaier from Illinois, one of the better quarterbacks in the country. Austin Simmons from LSU, a guy who's got a little bit more buzz, gets those Tua comparisons, wearing number 13, being a lefty, kind of working in an offense at Ole Miss, and where you saw him in some garbage time, you saw him in some spots. Certainly, if you watched Georgia Ole Miss, you saw him lead the Rebels on a touchdown drive and kind of dice up Georgia for a few plays there. Ty Simpson from Alabama. So, look, I think that Gunnar doesn't really get a lot of recognition heading into this year. And that's much, much different than the past few seasons. Like I said, Carson in 24, considered one of the top quarterbacks. Carson in 23, higher expectations on him as a first-year starter than, Stockton as a first-year starter. 22, Stetson Bennett, whether some people wanted him to or not, a national championship winning quarterback returning. There are expectations there that things can improve on what was already a good situation. Heading into 2021, it was former five-star JT Daniels who was supposed to be Georgia's quarterback. So there was plenty of hype that JT Daniels was going to lead Georgia potentially to a national championship, as Georgia ended up winning that year and was hyped up. But that offense was hyped up because of JT Daniels. In 2020, a little bit more of the disaster. And then obviously 2018, 2019, you had Jake Fromm, who was considered one of the better quarterbacks in the country at that time. Gunnar is going through an offseason where people are doubting him, and people like the big talking heads are going on TV and talking about how they think that he underwhelmed, how they don't think that there's a high ceiling. Kirby Smart definitely has faith that Gunnar Stockton can help Georgia win football games. I don't think that he would be there. Georgia did look for quarterbacks in the transfer portal. They didn't really go after any big names like a John Mateer or someone like that would, come in and actually potentially start over Gunnar Stockton. They didn't really go after players like that. Why? Well, the team and the staff, they love Gunnar, and I think that Gunnar certainly has the trust of this football program, certainly has the trust of Kirby Smart. I think that it's not surprising that Gunnar gets invited to something like the Manning Passing Academy, where he's going to be among all of these other quarterbacks. People are going to know his name a little bit more. I think that he has an opportunity to shine for Georgia. Now, I don't know if he's going to be a star. I think that Georgia has a little bit more star talent on his offense than it did a year ago, and part of that was expecting Carson Beck to be the star. But they added some pieces around him, and I think he can have a successful season for Georgia. But things like this show not everybody's doubting Gunnar Stockton. And I do think that the doubt is borderline disrespectful. I talked about that a little bit the other day, so I don't want to repeat myself too much. Make sure you're checking that video. Make sure you're checking out all of our videos here on the Dawg Post YouTube channel, and I appreciate you for watching.